Okay, can everybody listen to me? Wonderful. Hello, everybody. Thank you very much, all those that came to this session. My name is Lucas. I'm going to be talking about how Wildlife Studios, which is a company that I work for, maximizes mobile game performance and discoverability. So before I start, I'd like to give a shout out to the folks from Embrace who invited me to come to droidcon and do this presentation. So thank you very much. They also have a stand downstairs, so if you're interested in more details, feel free to go downstairs and talk to them. Okay? Wonderful. So before I start, I'd just like to briefly introduce myself. My name is Lucas. I am a manager of engineering operations at Wildlife Studios. I am from Brazil. I went to the Polytechnic School of the University of São Paulo. I studied industrial engineering. Before Wildlife Studios, I worked as a management consultant for over 3 years. I've been a manager, as I mentioned, at Wildlife Studios for the past 2 years, and I've worked with several strategic initiatives, including technical performance for our games, which is how I got to know Embrace. Basically, Wildlife wanted some help with to maximize the technical performance of our games, so we looked for a provider that could help us, that could be a partner for us. We tested several, and Embrace was the right provider for us in the end. So this is how I got to know the Embrace team, and this is why I'm here today to talk about our partnership. Wonderful. So for our agenda today, we have a few interesting topics. First of all, I'm going to give a brief background about Wildlife Studios. Who are we? Perhaps you've played some of our games, but you don't know the company as a whole. Then I'm going to talk about challenges that Wildlife Studio faces as a large mobile gaming studio, and of course, more specifically here, related to technical performance challenges for our games. Then the next 3 points in the agenda, they are really related to a few case studies that I brought, and I think that the case studies are really interesting because they really help show in concrete terms how Embrace is helping us maximize our technical performance. So instead of just talking about theoreticals, I'm going to get into a few case studies to cover these 3 points, which is basically consistently keeping games below bad behavior thresholds, leveraging best-in-class insights to focus on actual issues and not false alarms, and how Embrace helps us anticipate issues before having to hear them about from our player base. Wonderful. So who are we? What is Wildlife Studios? So we are a Brazilian mobile gaming company founded in 2011. Last week, we completed 12 years of existence. Basically, we understand that human beings are creatures that like to interact together, have fun together, and one of the ways to do this is through mobile gaming. So our mission really is to connect the world with the fun of gaming. We want to free the creators, just like my t-shirt says, free the creators and create any sort of game, mobile game, that will help people interact, engage, and have fun together. So this is our mission. I brought some success metrics. So basically, we've released over 60 games since we started. Not all of these games are what we call live games. Live games are a smaller subset of these games, which are games that we constantly release new content, updates, create events. So not all of these 60 games are live games, but we have several live games in our portfolio. Since our beginning, we've had over 3 billion downloads, so I'm always impressed with this number because it's a lot of downloads in such a short amount of time. And I also brought a few notable partnerships. So more specifically for one of our games, Tennis Clash, we've had partnerships with Roland Garros, US Open, the Billie Jean King Cup. If you are a tennis fan, you know that these are some of the greatest tennis events in the world. And for Roland Garros, in 1 year, there was the real event, and inside the game we had the virtual event. And the winner of the virtual event was then sent here to Paris to watch the final of the Roland Garros. So that was something super fun as well that we did. And I'm just bringing these numbers to show the size of Wildlife and to paint a picture of how big we are inside the mobile gaming landscape. So this is just a little bit about us. I also brought here a mosaic of some of our games. So as you can see, we're really genre agnostic. We have games about fighter jets, medieval games, coloring games, shooting games. So we actually don't focus on a specific genre. We do games that, in the end, we really are focused on doing games that are fun and exciting for people to play. Wonderful. So on to our next point. What challenges does Wildlife face? And of course here, as I mentioned, I'm focused on technical challenges related to the performance of our games. So first, scalability. When we're launching new games and when we're growing games, Scalability is an issue, mainly because it's really hard to estimate how big the game is going to grow, or how big the game is going to grow from soft launch to a global launch. It's really hard to predict this, so we have to provision the right amount of infra. We have to be really careful about, what are the issues that can happen in terms of technical performance when the game grows from, I don't know, like 1,000 players to 100,000 players. It's really hard to anticipate this, so this is one of the challenges that we face as a company. Resources. So I think that every company in the world faces this issue, which is allocating a finite number of resources into what generates most value and which will generate the most return. Wildlife is no different, and one of the most important resources that we have is developer time. So how do we make sure that we're investing our developers' time into what is most useful and what drives most value to games? So this is another challenge that we face. Observability. So as a mobile gaming studio, we track a plethora of data. We track player behavior, monetization, player progression. In terms of technical performance, we track, FPS stability, battery consumption, when crashes and ANRs happen. So we track a lot of information, and really extracting insights from these information is something that is challenging, because information on its own really doesn't mean anything. But extracting information and valuable insights from all this data, that is something hard that we also face. And support. So we really pride ourselves of being close to our player community, really pride ourselves of listening to them and working together with them. And unfortunately, sometimes we have to listen, oh, we have this bug here, can you fix it? It happens. In an ideal world, we would be able to anticipate all the issues and never hear any feedback from the player community. We don't live in an ideal world. So this is something that we also actively try to work on, which is anticipating issues, anticipating user feedback so that we can fix things before hearing about them from the player community. And because of all of this, these was a list of some of the technical issues and technical challenges that we face. As I mentioned, we sought a provider that would help us face these challenges. We tested several providers. We piloted a few of them. And in the end, we chose Embrace because we realized that they were the best fit in the market for us to help us face these challenges that I just mentioned. Wonderful. So as I mentioned, I think it's really important to bring in a few case studies because these really help depict in concrete terms how Embrace helps us solve a few and face some of the challenges that I just mentioned. I'm going to talk about actually 5 case studies related to 4 of our games. And there are going to be a short video for each one of these games so you can see how the game is like. But basically, I'm going to talk about a case study in Sniper 3D. The game below it is called Color by Number. Then we have Tennis Clash, which I already briefly mentioned, and a fighter jet game called Sky Warriors. Wonderful. So our first topic that I'm going to approach here in our case study is about keeping games consistently below bad behavior thresholds. So before I get into the case study, I just wanted to briefly talk about what are bad behavior thresholds. And I know that we're in a conference for Android developers, so perhaps everybody here knows about this. But still, just for the sake of being really, really thorough, I just thought I'd give a quick overview about what do I mean by bad behavior thresholds and why being below these thresholds is super important for any company that actually develops applications, including Wildlife Studios that develops games. So no, basically Google and I'm going to focus on Google here, but the reasoning is the same for iOS. They want to promote and feature apps that are healthy for their users. It's natural. So they've established thresholds for crash rates and ANR rates, which for a user it's kind of the same thing. In technical terms they are different, but for user it's kind of the same thing. The app just stops working. And they've established thresholds for which developers have to be below in order to be promoted and to not be, let's say, penalized in the App Store. So there's percentages that are overall percentages across all devices. User is for crash rates it's 1.09%, ANR is 0.47%, and then there are per phone model percentages as well. So there are a whole wide range of phones in the world, like really low-end devices, high-end devices. So being below these thresholds might not seem challenging, but it really is when you consider all the possible devices that exist in the world. So this is just a little bit about what are these bad behavior thresholds and what does it mean. Something that I recently listened in a webinar by a few Google developers is that there might be some changes here. So this is not official. I don't want to, no, I'm not committing with anything, but I listened to this in a webinar in which they might decrease the per phone model percentage from 8% to about 2%. And they might add another a bad behavior threshold related to FPS stability, which is also another metric to help applications and more specifically games be stable and be good overall for users. So this is not official, that's why I didn't put it there, but it's just another probable update. And if anybody here has more updates on that, please feel free to share. So as I mentioned, when you're below these bad behavior thresholds, a few things are more prone to happen or more probable to happen. So one of the things is on the left here, the chance of you being ranked higher in the App Store is higher. And I don't know you, but when I want to download something new, I usually go in the App Store or Google Play Store, and I look at the top charts. So being ranked well in these top charts is something super important for organic distribution. And sometimes the games are also, being below these bad behavior thresholds also help you to be featured more frequently inside the store as well, like these other two examples. So these are illustrative examples, but this is just highlighting how important it is to be below these bad behavior thresholds, not only in terms of organic distribution, because it really boosts your potential for organic distribution, but also in terms of just really delivering a good overall experience for your users. I mean, if your app has a really low ANR or crash rate, your users will be happier with the app, they will be more engaged, and potentially monetize more as well. So just stressing the importance of these thresholds and being below them. Wonderful. So on to our first case study. It's about Sniper 3D. Unfortunately, we don't have sound. It would look a lot cooler with sound, but that's okay. I'll just narrate on top. This is one of our oldest games, and I'm going to talk about this and why this is important. And fun fact, it's called Sniper 3D because it was the first game that Wildlife developed in 3D. So that just speaks to how old this game is. It's about 9 years old. But it's a super fun game, and I also invite you to download it and give it a try. The cinematics are really nice. Okay. So, what was the issue that we're having with Sniper 3D? Keeping ANR rates below bad behavior thresholds. Why was this happening? Well, basically, as I mentioned, it's a really old game, but it's one of our live games. So this means that weekly or every 2 weeks, we had a lot of content being shipped, new updates, new events. So whenever you're updating old code and you're adding new content, a lot of instability can happen, and this was happening with Sniper 3D. So whenever we launched a new update, we would spend a lot of developer time into really fixing issues and trying to keep the game below bad behavior thresholds. So this was the challenge that we're facing. We're wasting a lot of developer time to keep the game below bad behavior thresholds. And then when we brought Embrace, we started using Embrace to try to help us with this issue. So through Embrace, we were able to see that when ANRs happen, 60% of the time the game was on pause, 30% of the time the game was on web views, and 10% of the time the game was in some other situation. So we realized that we had to focus our investigation for when the game was on pause. And when the game is on pause, a few things can happen. So first, the game can be just writing analytics calls, the game can be sent to the background, or the game can be showing ads. And we had a strong hunch, and also looking at the Embrace data, that was where the issue really was lying on when the game was on pause, showing ads. So we did a few A/B tests, and in the end, we realized that the right solution was for us to disable ads for a subset of devices and stop supporting the game altogether for another subset of really low-end devices. And through Embrace's data, we were also able to see, okay, so what are this subset of really low-end devices that we have to stop supporting? And in the end, because of this measure, which was a little drastic but still was necessary, we were able to really easily keep the game below bad behavior thresholds without compromising any significant revenue. So I always like to say that there was no silver bullet in this situation. The solution here was a little bit drastic. We had to disable ads for a few devices and disable the game for another subset of devices. So there was no real silver bullets, but that's because the situation was a lot more drastic. So Embrace didn't help us find a silver bullet because there was any. And because of this, we were able to consistently stay below ANR thresholds, as I mentioned, and the game was featured a lot more in the Play Store, boosting organic distribution and also helping to deliver an overall better experience for our players. Wonderful. So now I'm going to talk about another game, Sky Warriors. Let me play the video. So I'm going to talk about this. This is one of our newest games. And it's super fun, super pretty as well. If you like fighter jets, if the gameplay is super easy to play with your phone. The cinematics, I mean, the visuals are just amazing. I also invite you to give it a try. And I promise it would be a lot cooler with the sound on. All right. Wonderful. So here we're talking about the same situation in which we're trying to keep the game below bad behavior thresholds. But the situation is a little bit different here because when I was talking about Sniper, that was a game that was really old, 9 years old. So, you know, the code, like the team that worked on the game left the company, it was a whole new team. So it was a different situation. Here for Sky Warriors, we're talking about a new game launch. So we launched Sky Warriors in the end of 2021. And when we launched the game, generic errors started to appear in other crash reporting tools, but it was really hard for us to understand the root cause of these errors. And you know, when we're launching a new game, it's perhaps the most important moment for us to have really good technical performance because we really want to cause a good first impression on the people and the community that is downloading the game. We want to have good reviews, so it's super important for us to have ANRs under control, crashes under control, and have good technical performance. I mean, we've seen with other games in the gaming industry how a game that's super hyped, when it's launched and it has bad technical performance, it can be really detrimental to publicity. So that's why it's super important to, during a new game launch, for us to really control our technical performance. So as I mentioned, errors were appearing in other crash reporting tools. There was no way to understand the root cause. When we looked at Embrace, we were able to see that the issue was actually related to a chat implementation bug that was causing crashes. Crashes was at 1.2%, which is, as you remember, above the 1.09 threshold. And through Embrace, we were able to see exactly what was the line of code that was causing the crash. So this really helped us to quickly fix the crash, launch a new, release a new patch fixing that, and we were able to bring the crash rate from 1.2% to 0.3%, which is below the bad behavior threshold. This boosted our organic distribution for this game, and it also delivered a better user experience in such a crucial moment, which is, as I mentioned, when the game is being launched and when the game is gaining traction in its first few weeks. So this is another example in which Embrace really helped us to keep the game below bad behavior thresholds and have a more successful launch. Wonderful. So now the other topic that I'm going to approach with two other case studies is about leveraging best-in-class insights to focus on actual issues and not false alarms. So this is really related on how Embrace helps us maximize our developers' time and really be able to invest our developers' time into what's useful for the company. So I'm going to talk about Color by Number, which is a coloring game. So as I mentioned, we don't follow a specific genre. We've talked about shooting games, fighter jet games. Now we're talking about coloring games. This game is super relaxing. You can paint game pictures that already come when you download the app, or you can even upload a picture yourself, and it will be converted into this format so that you can paint as well. So it's super fun. It's super relaxing. If you're having stress issues, I recommend you download this game. Yeah. So I'm going to talk about two situations. The first one is how Embrace helps us solve an actual issue in Color by Number. Basically, for a certain release of a version of Color by Number, we're seeing a lot of data inconsistency among different monitoring tools. And when we looked at Embrace, we saw that there was a crash that only showed up there and did not show up in other monitoring tools. So it was a crash related to a network bug. It was impacting thousands of players. And because of this, we were able to quickly fix the issue, which led me to think, okay, well, if we didn't have Embrace in this situation, we'd probably, this error, this issue would have affected our players for a longer period of time until someone reported it or until we saw it somehow, some other way. So, it really helped us quickly fix something that was impacting such a large player community and mitigating the impact that it had. So this is, overall, we were able to deliver a better play experience to our players because of this very accurate data that Embrace provided us. And on the other hand, so this is kind of the flip side, which was how Embrace helped us reduce the time we were wasting on false alarms. So for the same game, another situation, we were seeing a crash spiking in another monitoring tool that we were using, and we were wasting some time to try to understand, okay, what is this? What is happening? The error is not really clear in this other crash monitoring tool. And when we looked at Embrace, we saw that nothing showed up. So we're like, okay, what's going on? When we did a deep dive, we found out that the issue was actually related to a library error from the crash reporting tool itself. So basically, there was no impact to our player community. Nothing was reaching our player community. It was an issue with the library of the other crash reporting tool. So if we didn't have Embrace in this situation, we've probably spent a lot of time trying to address an issue that honestly didn't even exist. So this is, as I mentioned, an example about how Embrace has helped us avoid wasting time with false alarms. Wonderful. So on to our last topic, which is about anticipating issues before having to hear about them from our users. So I'm going to talk about Tennis Clash, which is a multiplayer game. So perhaps this is my favorite game at Wildlife Studios. If you're a tennis fan, I recommend you. I strongly suggest that you download the game. The gameplay is really fun. The progression as well. It can get super competitive. So it's really fun. And we frequently have partnerships, as I mentioned. So I really enjoy this game. Okay. So the example that I'm going to talk about here is how Embrace helped us anticipate an issue and be able to roll back a release that we made before it impacted a large player community. So as I mentioned, we hear a lot of things from our player community. Whenever we have issues, they report that to us. But ideally, we want to anticipate anything so that we can fix it before it reaches them. When we update games, we can sometimes do rollbacks to try to fix what we released. And there's a really cool feature in Embrace that is called Embrace Alerts, which helps us basically set up alerts and set a limit of percentages of errors or network errors. That if the percentages goes above that, it'll trigger an alarm, and we can quickly understand what's going on and fix it. So this is a real example in which these alerts helped us fix a release that we made. We basically did an update. In a few minutes, one of the errors spiked. Embrace's alerts started flaring, and we were able to roll back quickly before actually impacting all of our community. So if we didn't have Embrace alerts in this situation, what would happen probably we would have spent a lot more hours, working on something else, and then we would hear from our player community or from looking at other crash reporting tools that an issue had happened, and when we rolled back, it would be too late because a lot more players would have been affected. So using these alerts and using this feature is something that most other games use, which really helps us to be proactive instead of reactive when we're launching new content. So yeah, the result, as I mentioned, is that we can be more proactive, we can be more prepared to solve issues before they impact our player community. Wonderful. So in conclusion, I'd just like to share the key takeaways from today's conversation. So as I mentioned, we at Wildlife, we strive to deliver the best player experience for our users, for our players. But to do so, we need data, we need reliable data, we need data that brings insights. We chose Embrace so that we can maximize our performance for our games, and this has helped our games to be more successful, to be more profitable. As I mentioned, because of Embrace's help, we now can keep games consistently below the bad behavior thresholds, which has boosted our organic distribution and also helped us deliver a better gameplay experience and increasing retention and monetization. As I mentioned as well, we can focus on actual issues instead of false alarms. So I feel that working with developers at Wildlife, they are a lot more focused on working on what is actually valuable, and they feel that they've really been able to improve how they invest their time. And lastly, we've been able to more proactively respond to issues before hearing about them from players, and overall just having a better relationship with our player community. So these are the main takeaways from today's presentation. Once again, I want to thank Embrace for inviting me over here. And if you want to hear more about Embrace and the work that they do, we have 2 people in the back, and they have a booth downstairs. But now I would like to thank everybody here, and this is the end of the presentation. So thank you very much.